Ashok Terra Srimad His Divine Graces. Alai Charanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This current founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. DBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Founder Srila Prabhupada Sakri Gurudeva Acharya Srila Terra His Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhartha Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srilas Hari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Radhika Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Ram Ki Jai. Gandamai Ki Jamunamai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Gandharaj Sri Bhagavatam Ki Jai. We have done the transcendental book distribution Ki Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Shri Shri Gauranga Ki Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Shri Shri Dev Ki Shri Sharanam Ki Shri Gopal Ki Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the Son of the Devotees. All glories to the Son of the Devotees. All glories to the Son of the Devotees. All glories to Shri Sri Guru Sri Guru Bhagavad Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswati Vyasam
Tato Jayam Adirayat Nasta Paishu Bhadrishu
Nastavaishu Vadrishu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttam Shloke
Bhagavati Uttamashloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhakti Bhagavata Vashviki.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
everybody.
Krishna.
Small army here today. We'll be going over Srimad Bhagavatam, Council 4, Creation of Fourth Order, Chapter 4, Pitu Maharaj's meeting with the Kumaras, Shloka 45. Please repeat after me. Sadhana Patyam Cha Rajyam Cha
Sarvapanyam cha radyam cha
Danda Netritvam Eva Cha
Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Sarva Loka Dhipatyam Cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Vera Shastra Vedahati
Veda Shastra Hidarati
Sana Patyam Cha Rajyam Cha
Sanapanyam cha radyam cha
Danda Nritatvam Eva Cha
Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Sarva Loka Dhipatyam Cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Vedahati
Veda Shastra Hidarati
Sainapatyam Cha Rajyam Cha
Sainapatyam cha radyam cha
Nanda Nitritvam Eva Cha
Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Sarva Loka Dhipatyam Cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Vedahati.
Veda Shastra Hidarati
Bolo.
Sainapatyam cha radyam cha
Sainapatyam cha rajyam cha
Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Vidarati
Veda Shastra Vidarati
Sainapatyam cha radyam cha Dandhanetritvam eva cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Vidavati
Sanapatyam cha rajyam cha
Sanapatyam cha rajam cha
Dandanitrittvameva cha
Dandanitrittvameva cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Virahati
Veda Shastra Vidavati
Sanapacham cha rajam cha
Sanapatyam cha rajam cha
Danda Natsrivami vacha
Dandanitrittvameva cha
Sarvalokadi pacham cha
Sarvalokadipatyam cha
Veda Shastra Vidharati
Veda Shastra Vidavati. Alright, synonyms. Sanapatyam,
Sanapatyam,
post of commander-in-chief.
post of commander-in-chief.
Cha,
Cha,
and
and
Rajam,
Rajam,
post of ruler of the kingdom.
Post of the ruler of the kingdom.
Cha,
Cha
and
and
Danda,
Danda
ruling. Netritvam,
Netritvam
leadership.
leadership.
Eva,
Eva
certainly.
certainly.
Cha,
Cha
and
and
Sarva,
Sarva
all.
all.
Loka Adipatyam,
Lokadipatyam
proprietorship of the planet.
proprietorship of the planet.
Cha,
Cha
and
and
Veda Shastravit,
Veda Shastravit,
one who knows the purport of Vedic literature.
one who knows the purport of Vedic literature.
Arhati,
Clarity
deserves.
deserves.
Translation by His great divine grace to Prabhupada. Since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge deserves to be commander-in-chief, ruler of the state, the first to chastise and the proprietor of the whole planet, Prithu Maharaj offered everything to the Kumaras. Please repeat after me. Since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge
according to the principles of Vedic knowledge,
deserves to be commander-in-chief,
deserves to be commander-in-chief,
ruler of the state,
Ruler of the state.
the first to
The
chastise
first is chastised.
and the proprietor of the whole planet.
or the proprietor of the whole planet.
Prithu Maharaj offered everything to the Kumaras.
Prithu
Prithu
Maharaj
Maharaj offered everything to the Kumaras.
Purport. In this verse, it is very clearly stated that a kingdom, state, or empire must be governed under the instructions of saintly persons and brahmanas, like the Kumaras. When monarchy ruled throughout the world, the monarch was actually directed by a board of brahmanas and saintly persons. The king, as the administrator of the state, executed his duties as a servant of the brahmanas. It was not that the kings or brahmanas were dictators, nor did they consider themselves proprietors of the state. The kings were all well versed in Vedic literatures and thus were familiar with the injunctions of Sri Ishopanishad, Ishavasyam Vidam Sarvam. Everything that exists belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also claims that he is the proprietor of all planetary systems, Sava Loka Maheshwaram. Since this is the case, no one can claim to be the proprietor of the state. The king, president, or head of the state should always remember that he is not the proprietor, but the servant. In the present age, the king or president forgets that he is the servant of God and thinks of himself as servant of the people. The present democratic government is proclaimed to be a people's government, a government by the people and for the people. But this type of government is not sanctioned by the Vedas. The Vedas maintain that a kingdom should be governed for the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and should therefore be ruled by a representative of the Lord. The head of a state should not be appointed if he is bereft of all Vedic knowledge. In this verse, it is clearly stated Veda Shastra Vedarhati, that all high government posts are especially meant for persons who are well conversant with the teachings of the Vedas. In the Vedas, there are definite instructions to define how a king, commander-in-chief, soldier, and citizen should behave. Unfortunately, there are many so-called philosophers in the present age who give instruction without citing authority, and many leaders follow their unauthorized instruction. Consequently, people are not happy. The modern theory of dialectical communism, set forth by Karl Marx and followed by the communist governments, is not perfect. According to Vedic communism, no one in the state should ever starve. Presently, there are many bogus institutions which are collecting funds from the public for the purpose of giving food to starving people, but these funds are invariably misused. According to the Vedic instructions, the government should arrange things in such a way that there will be no question of starvation. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that a householder must see to it that even a lizard or a snake does not starve. They also must be given food. In actuality, however, there is no question of starvation, because everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, and He sees to it that there is ample arrangement for feeding everyone. In the Vedas, Katha Upanishad 2:13, it is said, Eko Bahunam Yo Vedadhati Kaman. The Supreme Lord supplies the necessities of life to everyone, and there is no question of starvation. If anyone starves, it is due to the mismanagement of the so-called ruler, government, or president. It is clear, therefore, that a person who is not well versed in the Vedic injunctions, Veda Shastra, should not run for election as president, governor, etc. Formerly, kings were known as Rajarshis, which meant that although they were serving as kings, they were as good as saintly persons because they would not transgress any of the injunctions of the Vedic scriptures and would rule under the direction of great saintly persons and brahmanas. According to the arrangement, modern presidents, governors, and chief executive officers are all unworthy of their post because they are not conversant with Vedic administrative knowledge, and they do not take direction from great saintly persons and brahmanas. Because of his disobedience to the orders of the Vedas and the brahmanas, King Vena, Prithu Maharaj's father, was killed by the brahmanas. Prithu Maharaj therefore knew very well that it behooved him to rule the planet as a servant of saintly persons and brahmanas. Om Gyanathamarantasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chaksu Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Ayam Rupakata Ayam Nidakti Swavirantakam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinamaya Chitakpate Gopisa Gopaka Kanta Rara Kanta Namoste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishbhano Sudrevi Panmami Hare Pre Mancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivasesha Sunivare Pasatyare Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare So, within this verse and this purport, we start going over the duties of a king or anyone in such an administrative position, such as a governor, and so forth, like we did previously in the 21st chapter. So we see here, just to go over the verse again, since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge deserves to be commander-in-chief, ruler of the state, the first to chastise and the appropriator of the whole planet, Prithu Maharaj offered everything to the Kumaras. So we see right here that a person in such a position is meant to be in proper knowledge with the Vedas. They're meant to follow the Vedas, and that's what actually makes them qualified to take up such a position. Because throughout different parts of the Vedic literatures, we find so many different rulings. Besides just the administrative class, for every varna and every ashram, there's directions that are given for us to follow. That way everything functions nicely together. And that way everyone can work together, we're a whole. You got the brahmanas, which are the head of society, and you got the kshatriyas, the administrative class, which are the arms of society. You got the vaishyas, which are the belly of society, and you got the shudras, which are the legs of society. So everyone has their part in the body of society. And this whole society, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, this Varna Ashram system was created and imposed by him, so that ultimately we can all progress within our spiritual practice. That way we can all progress in our Krishna consciousness and our service to Krishna. So we've been given these processes, and here we learn more about what exactly is it an administrator is supposed to do, someone in that kind of position. And we see that they take advice from higher authorities. They take advice from the Vedas, they're well versed in the Vedas, but they also take advice from the Brahmanas. Now generally within our normal day-to-day society, when we think of someone in such a position, we think that they're the all-in-all and that they're the ones that are coming up with what to do. Generally that's how it is nowadays. When it comes to the military, the president is the head in chief. There's no one basically above the president. He may have advisors, but ultimately he's the top dog. And the advisors themselves are not well versed in any Vedic literature, and they're all engrossed in animalistic mindset of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So they're improper to be able to even advise a president or a king or anyone. But generally, the president or king is the person that calls the shots. But we see here that we're supposed to take advice from saintly persons and brahmanas, from people in such knowledge, so that way we can properly execute our actions. So back in chapter 21, let's see if I can get back to that. We start to see one point that was made by the king. So one of the big points that we see within text 24 of the 21st chapter, it would say that any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashrama, but who simply exact tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. And in addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. So nowadays, we see that the government themselves mainly just extols a lot of taxes and imposes a bunch of, they impose a bunch of principles or laws that ultimately benefit them. Um, and our prices go up constantly within society. Like recently, I was talking with some people, and they told me about how their rent just went up. Um, some people were paying like 800 for rent, and then it went up to like 10,000. I've heard some people, their rent completely,
10,000?
yeah, something like that. And I heard some people went from like 600 to like 12,000 or
1,200.
1,200. That's what I mean. My bad. But anyways, yeah, it like jumped up so much, and with this, not everyone's able to keep up with affording anywhere to live at, and it's likely that there will be people that become homeless due to that, not because they have drug addiction or anything like this, mental health, but they just flat out can't afford to keep up with rent, car, all these different things. So it happens, and then of course they're out there begging on the streets, and from here, as we can see, everyone's supposed to be fed. That's the duty of a king, that's the duty of a president, that's the duty of someone in that position as a leader, is to make sure that everyone is fed. But so many people are starving, plants, animals, and humans, so many people are suffering through the starvation when there's plentiful food. There's so much, so many greens, so many grains, so many other things for people, but there are still people starving. And we're supposed to be the richest and best country in the US, in the world, but we have so many people that are homeless and so many people that are starving, regardless of how much money we're supposedly having, how great this country's supposed to be, how great how great our democratic government is. We're still having all these problems, and ultimately, it's because the people ruling are not knowledge. They're without knowledge. And this is a big problem within society, is that most people in society do not have any knowledge of what is this life and what is the goal of life. If you don't have a goal, you don't have somewhere you're going, then you're just going in any direction, which could be very dangerous. Even in a material way, if I'm just driving randomly and I'm just taking any road, maybe I even go off the road and I just make my own road or whatever, I can end up in places that aren't so nice, in positions that aren't so nice. And in the same way, if we don't have a proper direction on where we're going, our destination might not be so nice. It could cause us more suffering than we're wanting, more suffering than we're expecting, because we don't know. Ignorance covers us in such a way that we're blindfolded and we don't see the step right in front of us. And when we're following leaders that don't know, we're the blind following the blind. As said in the Bhagavad Gita, and I hope I quote this correctly, as great action, the actions of a great man,
Whatever action a great man performs, common men will follow.
and for every standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So, this is very true, even with people that aren't so great of men. People view them as great. We see this with actors, with musicians, and so many things. These people people idolize like no other. They, they post them up on their walls at home. They like post about them all the time. They talk about them all the time. When in actuality, these people themselves don't have any knowledge in themselves. They're just talking about their own experience and their own mental speculations about their own life, and other people follow this as if it was the gospel. And with people following this, again, they try to do the same actions. You see so many people now think that popping pills and taking drugs are cool, whereas back in the day, people would at least keep it to like smoking, like tobacco and weed and drinking, and they'd stay away from that. But now you hear about it in the songs so much that people are now taking drugs and harder drugs and all that, thinking it's cool. Same with women. Back then, women used to be a lot more conservative with how they dressed and how they acted and all this, but now it's seen that everyone should like flaunt their sexuality. They should show off their body, both males and females, and that the whole point of society is the male and female attraction. You hear that you need to go to school, then you need to go to college, then you need to get married, and then have a family, and then in the end you have your white picket fence and retire. This is the goal of everyone's life. They set all these temporary ultimate goals of their life. I was talking with a good friend the other day, and they asked me, what do you find as the truth? And I asked, do you mean the absolute truth or do you mean relative truth? They asked me about the absolute truth. I told them that the absolute truth is something that is consistent and never changing. It's always the truth. Like God, for example. God exists. He's never not existing. And God is God. He's never not God. He may act like he's not God, but no matter what, you can't take away that position from him. So in the same way, there's an absolute truth to what is the goal of life. So many people think the goal is whatever you make it. Life is what you make it. And this is kind of nihilistic in one sense. This is, there's no inherent meaning, so you make up your own idea of what you want life to be. But actually, we know from our great literature and the people that gave us this knowledge before us, like Srila Prabhupada or our own spiritual master, that the goal is actually to learn who is God and how to love God, who is Krishna and how to love Krishna, how to serve Him in a loving manner. And this is the goal of life. Some people think it's money, some people think it's fame, some people think it's getting that pretty girl, some people even think it's liberation. But ultimately, it's about creating this relationship with God that we've lost. And this is known throughout the whole world in ancient times. You can look throughout the whole world and there's some spiritual or religious system trying to find out God and trying to serve Him in one shape or form, calling out to God. Over time, obviously this has changed. People with selfish motives start pushing more of this atheistic agenda of let's just eat, sleep, and be married and all this, eat, sleep, drink, whatever. and be merry. Let's just enjoy the moment. Let's just enjoy this life to the fullest that we can. And this influences became bigger and bigger. Nowadays, you ask people if they've even touched a scripture, even read a full thing of scripture, maybe even a page, and so many people nowadays haven't. So many people these days actually think it's bad if you follow a religious system because they think it sets and opposes something unnatural unto you. Because now you're denying your desires, you're denying your sexual desires, you're denying your diet, you're denying all these things, denying how you act and interact with other people in certain ways. And so many people nowadays actually see religious systems or religious scriptures as bad, maybe even satanic, because you're putting restraints on yourself. When in actuality, restraining yourself helps you in so many ways. If I don't restrain myself from smoking meth, then wow, I'm gonna probably be out on the street and losing my teeth and doing all kinds of horrible things. Or if I don't hold myself back from saying something to someone, I could really cause them to be upset or more. So many things come when you don't know how to restrain yourself in different ways. But anyways, the goal is to not just restrain ourselves. That's not the goal of life. The idea is to set forth these desires in Krishna, into our relationship with Krishna. Instead of eating whatever, then I should eat Krishna's prasadam. If I want to see something beautiful, then I should go see the deities. If I want to hear something beautiful, I should hear kirtan or hear someone reading Srimad Bhagavatam or maybe a bhajan. If I want to talk, then I should talk Krishna Katha. I should connect every desire with Krishna. Because we can't get rid of desire, we can't get rid of our senses because these are both symptoms of the soul. But it's how you engage these things that makes it spiritual or makes it mundane. Because if you try to cancel out and deny who you are, then you're going to fall back down. This happens time and time again when you try to restrain yourself. We even see just on a diet, someone like artificially gives up like all these different items, but as soon as like that time extent that they wanted to follow that diet for runs out, they're like back eating all those same things generally all over again. Or even with just spirituality, people try to deny themselves from doing any activities, from hearing anything. They deny themselves as a person and so many other things, and it actually makes an awkward position where they get conflicted within, because now they're trying to deny themselves, but they believe that it's true, but part of them is telling them this isn't the right thing. And so they try to interact with people, but you can't really interact with people in the same way or in a good way, in a productive way. You try to be within society, and that doesn't work out because you're denying that you're a personal being, and you're denying the activities of the soul. Because the soul is a social being, and the soul is a personal being. But if you try to deny these things, ultimately you start causing your own mental pains, and then eventually you'll likely fall down again. And even if you make it to the Brahma Jyoti, in time you're going to have to fall back down again, just to learn how to be personal and learn about Krishna I learned how to have that relationship, that personal relationship. And another important thing that was pointed out at the end of this verse was that someone in a position of a king or governor, any leadership position like this, whatever possessions they have are ultimately meant for Krishna. Because we come in this world with nothing. We don't come with someone, we don't come with anything but these bodies, but even then we leave these bodies at some point. So we come in this world with nothing. So nothing belongs to you truly. Within our lifetime, we end up acquiring so many things. By the time you hit like 3 years old, you start hitting that me and mine age where everything's yours. And this progresses further and further. You start saying my car, my house, my friends, my this, my that, and you got so many possessions. It's not bad to have these in your possession, but it's important to remember that you're not the appropriator of these things you have in your possession. You're just the caretaker of all these different things. Because ultimately these things are all Krishna's to begin with. Everything's Krishna's. There's nothing that's ours. So the proper way to deal with these things is that we offer all these things to Krishna. That's true renunciation. People try to renounce things artificially by saying, I'm going to give this up, I'm going to give that up. I'm done with owning anything. But this is false unless it's for Krishna. If you could be the richest man and have so many things, but if you have the consciousness that none of this is mine, and that all this is Krishna's and for the service of Krishna, then that is ultimate renunciation. I want you to learn how to come to that stage. That's the whole process of Bhakti Yoga, is none of this is mine, I own nothing, but there are so many things within this world that I can use to engage in Krishna service. There's so many beautiful flowers that are opulent and smell wonderful that I can offer to Krishna. There's so many different foodstuffs that I can offer. There's a variety of different things because Krishna loves variety. We may not have the same variety that there is in the spiritual world, but we have a big variety because Krishna loves this variety. So we get to learn through the process of Bhakti Yoga how to engage everything, including our body and our mind, our intelligence, with Krishna. And this goes into everything, including our own governmental system, could be used in Krishna service. Because otherwise we end up with failing institutions, like I had mentioned about communism and about democratic governmental systems. There's still people starving regardless. There's still poor people that are like extremely poor. So many horrendous conditions throughout the world with all these ideas created by random philosophers and random institutions. But when we learn how to engage all these with Krishna and follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas or previous Rajarishis, saintly kings, then we could start to perform all these different duties in the proper perspective, in the proper way that actually helps everything function nicely, makes the body function. Otherwise, we're walking around headless without instruction from higher authorities, especially in spiritual matters, like the brahmanas who are the heads of the society, then we're literally walking around headless without proper direction or proper guidance. That could lead us to all kinds of different things. If a parent doesn't raise their kid properly, with proper guidance, then that kid oftentimes falls into bad association, bad activities, and so forth. So the main point of this whole entire verse and purport is to, one, follow in the footsteps of those before us with Vedic knowledge, follow the Vedic knowledge, even if that means in like the Varnashram, the whole community, to follow in that way, and two, to offer everything as an offering to Krishna, whatever you have in your possession. Anyways, yes, Lalonda.
You mentioned some very nice points, but one of the things that really struck me is how you were talking about how like we come into this world with nothing, with nothing, but one of the things that we come into this world with life after life is the super soul, and it was making me think of this verse in the 11th canto in the prayers of Pingala the prostitute, where after she got frustrated with not being able to find men, she said, I have given up the association of one who is actually most dear to me. Instead, I wish to enjoy with like miserly men, or however she puts it. And it makes me think, these were Joshis. That's what it's talking about here. They ultimately had this knowledge, at least in the back of their minds, that at the end of the day, I come in with nothing but Krishna, and I'm going to leave nothing but Krishna. So at the end, what we have is really our relationship with Krishna. And so when you're mentioning about communism, people think, okay, we're going to divide everything up equally, and everybody will be happy. But because Krishna is not the center of that, then what happens is the leaders just exploit. They take everything and give the people, okay, a little bit. So what the Shri Upanishad promotes, and this verse is quoted in the purport here, Isha Lashmanindam Sarvam, this idea of Bhagavatam communism, that Krishna owns everything and he gives everybody their quota. And Krishna always gives the appropriate quota. So when the leader has this in mind, combined with the idea of, okay, I don't own any of this, I just come into this world with Krishna. Krishna owns everything. Things run peacefully. So I appreciate that point you gave. You get that realization.
That was a great point. Thank you for including that. Anyone else? Yes, Prabhu?
You mentioned that we have to follow Varnashram. That seems very practical.
No, I was just mentioning that that kind of system in this position, but in this age it's kind of impractical. I mean, maybe it could be imposed, but main thing is follow Krishna.
So what do we do instead?
I'm not exactly in such a position to speak on that matters, but I follow the head leaders who can tell you what to do in that position.
As a society, we have to do something. But yes, the best thing is just even democracy would work if people were Krishna conscious.
Yeah. That's a very important point.
Prabhupada makes that point. That Prabhupada in different places recommends democracy at different times, although most of the time he didn't. But like democracy would work if Krishna consciousness people were Krishna conscious. But there has to be, that's far out. So
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking something similar, like, alright, if we have this godless society, how do we bring
might not necessarily happen. I mean, you could try and maybe you could be successful, but you could also train up people to take up those positions.
I think that more than likely, what's gonna happen is that Krishna's gonna have to smash this society at some point. Not like Kalki, but like before the golden age takes place, the society has to be desecrated by war, pestilence, indolence, and then at that time the Hare Krishna movement will be the only hope for the world. Just like in Russia, Russia's not such a nice country. And so for many people may have asked the Russians why they're so into Krishna consciousness. It's because they don't get to play Xbox. You know, they get pleasure from being Krishna conscious, from associating, doing kirtan, doing harinam. This is like their life. And then Americans, we have so much distraction that it's very difficult for us to, be serious about Krishna consciousness. But if and when the time comes that we get ours, so to speak, at that time, preaching will be very nice.
Yeah. Alright, I think that's it. Kantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Gauranga Prema ki.
Jai.